The avoidant attachment style operates on a complex system of unconscious fantasies that drive their attraction and desire patterns in ways they rarely recognize themselves. Understanding these deep psychological fantasies and learning to embody them strategically can create an almost magnetic pull that makes the avoidant pursue connection with unprecedented intensity. These fantasies stem from their core wounds and unmet needs, creating psychological triggers that bypass their usual defensive mechanisms when activated correctly. The key to making an avoidant go crazy for someone lies in understanding that their conscious preferences often contradict their unconscious desires. While they claim to want independence and emotional distance, their deepest fantasies revolve around finding someone who can provide safety, understanding, and acceptance without triggering their fears of engulfment or vulnerability. The person who can embody these fantasies becomes irresistible to the avoidant because they represent the solution to their fundamental psychological conflict. Fantasy 1. The emotionally self-sufficient partner. The avoidant's primary fantasy involves finding someone who is completely emotionally self-sufficient and doesn't need them for validation, security, or happiness. This fantasy stems from their terror of becoming responsible for someone else's emotional well-being and their fear of being drained by needy, dependent partners. When someone embodies genuine emotional independence, it triggers the avoidant's deepest attraction because it promises connection without the burden of emotional caretaking. To activate this fantasy, one must demonstrate authentic emotional regulation that doesn't fluctuate based on the avoidant's behavior or availability. This means maintaining consistent mood and energy regardless of whether the avoidant is being attentive or distant. The person who can remain genuinely happy, fulfilled, and emotionally stable, whether the avoidant is present or absent, becomes incredibly attractive because they represent the possibility of safe connection. This emotional self-sufficiency must be authentic rather than performed. The avoidant has highly sensitive radar for detecting fake independence or emotional manipulation disguised as self-reliance. They can sense when someone is performing strength while secretly hoping for rescue or validation. Only genuine emotional maturity and self-sufficiency will activate their fantasy, because only authenticity provides the safety they unconsciously seek. The emotionally self-sufficient person doesn't pursue the avoidant when they withdraw, doesn't become anxious about relationship status or future plans, and doesn't require constant reassurance or attention. This behavior is magnetic to the avoidant because it demonstrates that the person won't become the clingy, demanding partner they fear. Instead, it suggests the possibility of a relationship where both people maintain their autonomy while sharing connection. This fantasy also includes the avoidant's desire to be chosen rather than needed. They want someone who could be happy alone but chooses to be with them because they genuinely enjoy their company, not because they need them to feel complete. This distinction between being wanted and being needed represents the difference between safe and threatening connection for the avoidant. Fantasy 2. The mysterious challenge. The avoidant fantasizes about encountering someone who remains slightly mysterious and unpredictable, someone they can't completely figure out or control. This fantasy stems from their need for intellectual stimulation and their attraction to complexity that matches their own internal sophistication. The person who is too easy to read or too eager to reveal everything about themselves fails to capture the avoidant's imagination in lasting ways. To embody this fantasy, one must maintain layers of depth and complexity that the avoidant can explore gradually over time. This doesn't mean being deceptive or playing games, but rather having a rich inner life, diverse interests, and personal depths that can't be immediately accessed or understood. The avoidant needs to feel like they're discovering someone rather than being presented with a complete package. This mysterious quality includes having personal boundaries and private spaces that the avoidant isn't immediately invited into. The person who maintains their own social circles, personal interests, and emotional depths that aren't immediately shared creates intrigue that keeps the avoidant engaged. They represent an ongoing puzzle to be solved, rather than an open book to be quickly read and discarded. The challenge aspect of this fantasy involves being someone who doesn't automatically defer to the avoidant's preferences or immediately accommodate their needs. The person who has their own opinions, makes their own plans, and occasionally chooses their own priorities over the avoidant's convenience creates a dynamic tension that the avoidant finds irresistible. They're attracted to people who challenge them intellectually and emotionally without being combative or demanding. This fantasy also includes the avoidant's desire to earn someone's affection rather than having it freely given. They're suspicious of people who are immediately available and enthusiastic because such eagerness triggers their fear that the person must be desperate or lacking in options. The person who requires some effort to win over feels more valuable and trustworthy to the avoidance psychology. Fantasy 3. The non-judgmental witness. The avoidant secretly fantasizes about finding someone who can see through their defensive strategies to their authentic self without judging or trying to change them. This fantasy represents their deepest longing to be truly known and accepted despite their emotional limitations and protective behaviors. They want someone who understands why they need space and distance without taking it personally or trying to fix them. To activate this fantasy, one must demonstrate consistent acceptance of the avoidant's need for emotional regulation through withdrawal and space. This means not interpreting their retreat as rejection or punishment, but understanding it as their way of maintaining their capacity for connection. The person who can say, "I understand you need some time to process, and I'll be here when you're ready," becomes incredibly valuable to the avoidant. This non-judgmental acceptance extends to understanding the avoidant's communication style, which often involves actions rather than words. The person who can recognize and appreciate the avoidant's subtle expressions of care, remembering important details, showing up consistently, providing practical support, rather than demanding verbal declarations of love, creates safety for the avoidant to express affection in their natural way. The non-judgmental witness also appreciates the avoidant's strengths and capabilities without trying to fix their perceived weaknesses. They celebrate the avoidant's independence, competence, and emotional regulation rather than focusing on their limitations in emotional expression or vulnerability. This positive focus allows the avoidant to relax their defensive posture because they don't feel under constant evaluation or improvement pressure. This fantasy includes being seen as fundamentally good and worthwhile, despite their relationship struggles. The avoidant often carries deep shame about their inability to love in conventional ways, and they desperately want someone who recognizes their capacity for care, even when it doesn't look like traditional romantic expression. The person who can see and validate their hidden tender spots becomes irreplaceable to them. Fantasy 4. The secure base. The avoidant fantasizes about finding someone who can serve as a secure base, a consistent, reliable presence that provides safety without demands for reciprocal vulnerability. This fantasy stems from their early attachment wounds, where they learn that expressing needs led to rejection or disappointment. They long for someone who offers stability and support without requiring them to immediately match that energy or vulnerability. To embody this fantasy, one must provide consistent emotional availability without making demands for equal disclosure or intimacy. This means being reliably supportive when the avoidant does reach out, while not punishing them for their periods of distance or emotional unavailability. The secure base remains steady and welcoming without becoming clingy or demanding when the avoidant retreats. This secure base quality includes emotional predictability and reliability. The avoidant needs to know that their person won't suddenly become dramatically different won't create unnecessary conflict or chaos, and won't require constant emotional management. They're attracted to people who are emotionally stable and consistent because such stability allows them to gradually relax their hypervigilance around emotional safety. The secure base also provides practical reliability, following through on commitments, being punctual, maintaining their word, and demonstrating general life competence. The avoidant is attracted to people who have their life together because such competence suggests they won't become a burden or require caretaking. They want partners who enhance their life rather than complicating it. This fantasy includes being able to gradually increase vulnerability and intimacy at their own pace without pressure or demands for faster emotional development. The secure base allows the avoidant to test the waters of deeper connection slowly, retreating when necessary without punishment or guilt tripping. This patient approach to intimacy development makes deeper connection feel possible rather than threatening. Fantasy 5, the equal partner. The avoidant fantasizes about finding someone who operates as a true equal, someone with their own achievements, goals, and life direction who doesn't need the avoidant to provide meaning or direction to their existence. This fantasy stems from their fear of becoming responsible for someone else's life choices and their attraction to competence and self-direction in others. To activate this fantasy, one must demonstrate genuine personal ambition and achievement that exists independently of the relationship. This means having career goals, personal projects, and life objectives that provide fulfillment and identity beyond romantic connection. The avoidant is attracted to people who are building interesting lives because such people feel like worthy companions rather than dependents. This equal partner fantasy includes intellectual and emotional compatibility without neediness or competition. The avoidant wants someone they can respect and admire, someone whose opinions and perspectives they value, someone who challenges them to grow without making them feel inadequate or defensive. They're attracted to people who stimulate their mind and expand their worldview. The equal partner also maintains their own social connections and doesn't expect the avoidant to fulfill all their social and emotional needs. The person who has friendships, family relationships, and social activities that don't include the avoidant demonstrates that they won't become socially dependent or isolating. This independence allows the avoidant to maintain their own social autonomy without guilt. This fantasy includes financial and practical independence, where both people contribute equally to shared expenses and responsibilities. The avoidant doesn't want to feel like they're supporting someone or being supported by someone in ways that create power imbalances or obligations. They prefer relationships where both people maintain their autonomy and contribute equally to shared experiences. Fantasy 6, the adventure companion. The avoidant fantasizes about finding someone who shares their love of novelty, exploration, and adventure without requiring constant togetherness or emotional processing of every experience. They want a companion who can enjoy new experiences, travel, intellectual pursuits, and personal growth alongside them without making every activity about the relationship or emotional bonding. To embody this fantasy, one must demonstrate genuine enthusiasm for exploration and growth that isn't dependent on the avoidant's participation or validation. This means pursuing interesting hobbies, learning new skills, seeking novel experiences, and maintaining curiosity about the world that exists independently of romantic connection. The avoidant is attracted to people who are intrinsically motivated to grow and explore. This adventure companion quality includes being low maintenance during shared experiences. The avoidant wants someone who can enjoy activities without requiring constant attention, emotional check-ins, or relationship processing during adventures. They prefer companions who can be present and engage with experiences, rather than using activities as opportunities for relationship development or bonding. The adventure companion also brings their own ideas and interests to the relationship rather than simply following the avoidance lead or expecting to be entertained. The person who suggests new experiences, introduces fresh perspectives, and contributes their own adventure ideas becomes valuable because they enhance the avoidance life with novelty and stimulation. Implementation strategy. Successfully embodying these fantasies requires authentic personal development rather than performance or manipulation. The avoidant can sense inauthenticity and will be repelled by obvious attempts to play roles or meet their psychological needs strategically. The most effective approach involves genuinely developing the qualities that activate their fantasies while maintaining personal integrity and emotional honesty. The timing of revealing these qualities matters significantly. Demonstrating emotional self-sufficiency, mystery, non-judgmental acceptance, secure base qualities, equal partnership, and adventure companionship should happen naturally through consistent behavior rather than dramatic displays or obvious positioning. The avoidant needs to discover these qualities gradually rather than being presented with them as a package deal. Maintaining these qualities consistently over time becomes crucial because the avoidant will test whether they're authentic or performed. They'll create situations to see if the emotional self-sufficiency holds under pressure, if the mystery remains when they withdraw, if the acceptance continues when they're difficult, if the secure base stays stable during their emotional unavailability. Understanding that embodying these fantasies serves one's own personal development, regardless of romantic outcomes, ensures authenticity and prevents manipulation. The qualities that attract avoidance, emotional regulation, independence, depth, acceptance, stability, equality, and adventurousness are valuable character traits that enhance any relationship and personal life satisfaction. The person who can authentically embody these avoidant fantasies doesn't just become irresistible to avoidance. They become the kind of person capable of healthy, fulfilling relationships with anyone. They develop emotional maturity, personal integrity, and relationship skills that serve them well, regardless of their partner's attachment style. This authentic development ensures that attracting an avoidant leads to genuine compatibility rather than unsustainable performance. The ultimate goal isn't manipulation or control, but creating the conditions where healthy love becomes possible. When someone embodies these fantasies authentically, they provide the avoidant with the safety and inspiration necessary for genuine emotional growth and deeper connection. This approach benefits both people by creating a relationship dynamic